And Yvonne, just to introduce myself, I'm Martin Janssens. I'm an MArch student here at the University of Texas at Austin. And I want to, thank both of you for coming as part of the lecture series at UTSOA, which I think I'm obliged to say it's sponsored by the Dean Addington here. So Yvonne and Shelley, you are two partners in, amongst other people that form Grafton Architects, the most recent winners of the Pritzker Prize and the 2020 REBA Gold Medal. And my first question is about the name Grafton. As I understand it, you chose that name because it's a street where your studio was founded. Is that correct?
Yeah.
A prominent street in Dublin.
I was looking for an apartment, and I came back to the group and I said, I found this terrific place on Grafton Street with an elevator, and on the top floor it has roof lights, and the response was, that's exactly what a studio should be. So there were 5 of us working together at the time, and to have a studio or an architectural firm with 5 surnames is rather cumbersome at the end of a telephone line. Yeah. So we chose to take the name of Grafton Street. It's the main pedestrian street in the city. But also, I think it's true of both Shelley and I over time, it also confirmed a number of things. One, the kind of collective, but also the importance of place. So it became the umbrella under which the 5 of us as a kind of a cooperative began.
Yeah, we believed in the cooperative, that it wouldn't be just one name, but what we were trying to do was to set up a studio, and it was, we were very young. It's 1977 or 78 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were in our early 20s with no experience of building, but a lot of passion and a lot of the arrogance of youth, perhaps, yeah, we really wanted to do something.
There's a terrific photograph of it. It was we have a lovely photograph of a kind of a cleared studio space with some of our professors who were there as well, and 5 people got stuck in the elevator, and the fire brigade had to be called to winch them out. And
on the night of the opening, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, but it was a wonderful place, and also what's really fantastic is that it had a roof light. It also faced west, so you were looking into the interior of an urban block, and it was really quite because it was on the top floor. It was also quiet, but then you came down and you opened the door into the absolutely throbbing, well, pre-COVID street, which was absolutely full of shoppers and day trippers and people. So it was a beautiful relationship between the vibrant city and the quiet place of thinking and working. So it was a wonderful section. So this busy Grafton Street is sinuous, comes down from a major park, and then it goes down to Trinity College, and it's on the line of an old river. So there's this gorgeous curved, which captures the midday sun. It's a very beautiful location in Dublin, between St. Stephen's Green, which had on the other side of it, when Shelley and I were studying architecture, the School of Architecture on the other side of Stephen's Green. So our daily walk as students even was to leave the School of Architecture, walk through Stephen's Green and down Grafton Street, and then Trinity College. Sorry, Shell. Off you go.
No, we kept it on until last year when we had to give it up. We're still trying to hang on, but we did the Venice Biennale exhibition from the office, and we moved in 2002. We moved to a bigger office when we won Bocconi, and then in the recession, we moved back to this tiny office, which is 60 square meters. Where, well, we even had less. So we moved back, and then we kept it, but we still have a bit of it, Yvonne, do we?
Yeah, we do, yeah. What's lovely, can you describe the Venice Biennale? What was interesting was that because a huge amount of it had to be confidential for so long, we also needed a place that wasn't in our main office. So it was really lovely to have this little secret loft kind of space, which gave birth, if you like, to the ideas that held the Biennale together. And it was, it was really lovely over time to physically be in the same space.
Well, I have a few more questions here about the name of your firm, but I think you mentioned the Bocconi project, and that gets into maybe my next area of questions, which deal with how your work is described, and in terms of style, in terms of form. And there's many ways that you describe your own work, but others describe your work as well. And I think one that happens that I happen to see a lot is brutalism, which I think fell out of favor for a little while. But I think maybe as part of your work in spearheading those forms is sort of back at the forefront of architecture. How do you respond to your work being called brutalist?
We're kind of surprised, actually, because we never set out to continue in that vein. We've always been interested in structure and in the kind of heroic quality of structure. And actually, probably I don't think they're called brutalist. The architects that we've been most influenced by in doing Bocconi and Lima would be South American architects. Why are they not called brutalist? Or are they? Are they included in the brutalist category? People like Paulo Mendes de Rocha, I mean, Niemeyer isn't. Maybe they are. Anyway, we just found that we really found the liberating potential of structure in those projects really fascinating. And the other thing we found really compelling was the kind of rawness of the raw, robust quality. Yeah, maybe that is brutalist. And we were drawn towards that because it seemed to accentuate the spatial and the formal moves in architecture, and it had a kind of a distillation of things down to the rudimentary important elements. So it wasn't all about layers and more layers, and it was about trying to see how you can make the most from the big moves. Can that make the building for you? Can it make the spaces? Can it make the organization? Can it make the facade? Can it make everything? And actually, it's really interesting. We were just talking today about we've had a number of sessions in terms of reviewing our work and the way we build. And there's a fantastic environmental designer that we work with, Klaus Bode is his name. And he gave us a series of talks during the summer on his reviewing of building, how we build now. And what he was questioning was this whole thing of value engineering, and he's developing a new series of parameters, let's say, in terms of value for money. But his conclusion was that the most important elements of a building are the structure and the facade. And they're the things that last the longest. And even though he's the one that his expertise is in mechanical systems of environmental control, they're the pieces that need to be replaced. They're the shortest lived. So that his view was that the money should be spent by clients on the structure, and that the structure would make sense, and because it lasts, and how it performs more than one function in terms of shading or thermal mass, or if it's wood, whatever, and the facade. And that was really interesting, because they're the things that we find get people say, well, we have to have certain level of environmental control, but you need to thin out your facades and simplify your structure and all of that. So it's very interesting as to where where the core of architecture lies.
If I could add to that, Martin, that like Bocconi and UTEC in Lima, and the London School of Economics, and Kingston, let's just take them as concrete. I mean, the term kind of brutalism is a kind of a, you know, at one level describes a material, but from our point of view, it's also about the relationship between architecture and structure, and that the twinning of those rather than layering them. Many contemporary buildings have a structure, and then it's layered and layered, and then it's lost. So really it becomes interior designed, if you like. It's layered, and you don't see the kind of dinosaur bones of and that relationship between architecture and structure is something. I would say that we're more like structuralists rather than brutalists. That in Bocconi, there's a story we often tell. I mean, every 25 meters, there's this diaphragm wall of 3.5 meters, and then 25 meters, and then lifted up, hanging from the roof, are these offices. So the structure is the aesthetic, is the spatial springboard. And Shelley and I had an experience on the day it was finished as a building in 2008. It was open to the public, and the person who was taking the photographs over the construction period and of the building asked, would we like to meet the person from whose apartment he had taken the photographs across the road. And it was an elderly lady, and we went to visit her, and we asked, would you like to see the building? And she said no. And then we stayed with the family for a short time, and we were leaving. We said, would you like to come and see it? She said no. And just as we were leaving, she agreed. And she was in her 90s, and she came down with us to the building and went down the 15 feet below and then the 27 feet below, and stood there. And she said in Italian to us, she said, the structure is immense, but it embraces you. And for us, that she had got the building, if you like. This was a matrix, a three-dimensional matrix where the structure allows space to flow through. So in Bocconi and in UTEC, we use if you like, the concrete as a contemporary mud to make a new carved mountain to protect against the very, I mean, the sun is only 12 degrees from the equator, so it's hot, or it can be hot there, or it can be very intense, I should say. But I think the material, what is interesting, that in two buildings that in Shelley's section of the lecture tonight, in terms of the London School of Economics, or in Kingston, where the if you like, the concrete component is down to its minimal prefabricated dimension, then you get a different kind of spatial. I think we'd probably say we're materialists in the sense of trying to express material. What we will look at the project in Arkansas will be, how do we make a building where we really celebrate timber? So we're kind of excited about material, and about each project being, we don't have a kind of a Grafton style, you know, that you get this product and you got a kind of a Nike kind of version, it's stamped. It's every project is like a new invention. It's like, so sometimes we use concrete, and we're assessing it under, if you like, the sense of the earth as client and its environmental impact versus other materials. So I think we choose materials to do a job. So I wouldn't say we're brutalist. I wouldn't say we're brutalist.
It's
Well,
you're called brutalist. There's nothing you can do about it. But there's a very interesting thing a French journalist said about our the building just outside of Paris, and she used the term brutalist. But what she felt was that there was a real sense of intimacy, that there were all these corners and these small places where you could retreat, and that the building had both a kind of a megastructure scale, let's say, or heroic scale, but that it also felt very intimate. And I think very interesting. And maybe the thing that one reacts against in relation to brutalism is that it's always associated with aggression, that there's something aggressively present or forceful about it. We want buildings to have presence. We're not afraid of, we think it's important sometimes that a building has a heroic quality, but that it never loses that sense of intimacy.
Well, I think it's interesting in terms of the word. You know, we said we're divided by a common language, Martin, that brute comes from the French raw. And I think really in the true sense of the word raw, we like the sense of the material being legible. But I think brutalist, when it comes the other meaning in English, you know, if somebody is a brute, it's like brute force, and it's a kind of as you say, Shell, it's aggression. I think it's also a thing of translation that it's
What is it in French, Yvonne?
brut is kind of you know, raw, you know.
No, but maybe we should make a word in French, which means we should use the French word or an Irish
Texan.
word.
We'll find a Texan word, Martin.
Yeah.
Texan.
What would you call this?
Well,
Rawhide stuff.
Rawhide.
I mean, you know, brutalism, it's all, I mean, you know, it has avocations, like you said, of brute force, but also I think now if you look at the work of like Leong and Leong, or even the way your work is critiqued, there's always an addendum, like a sensitive brutalism or a soft brutalism. And I think I honestly, you know, this conversation has been amazing with you two, even though there's only been really one topic or two topics we've talked about. I don't want to keep you from your lecture, presenting your current works. So I'll try and end it here if there's any parting notes about maybe your for students who are graduating, right? Like myself, what would your advice be to them, just very briefly, in a world of you know, kind of tumultuousness currently?
We're going to talk about this a little bit tonight, but I think it's a fantastic time to be an architect because it's a time of rethinking and a time of opportunity. And I think it's also a time where the general public and the forces that be have in the past ignored the values of architecture can no longer do this. Nobody can afford to ignore the values of architecture, which are to do with humanity and to do with well-being and to do with climate and air and light and all of those things. They're coming back to the fore in terms of things that you can't avoid dealing with. So I think there's fantastic opportunities for architects if we just take them.
I
And I don't
think
mean in terms of commercial, I just mean in terms of making a contribution to the current crisis of faith, or whatever it is one would call it.
it's an amazing profession, and you're very, very lucky to be training as an architect, Martin. And we're probably going through a fourth recession. So recessions are like waves. Architecture is connected to the, if you like, the building industry, but it's also it's a form of optimism. You can imagine and help society. I mean, I have an ambition. It would be amazing if architecture was dealt with in the same way as sport is in terms of the news, you know, that there would be in the same way as people wonder about baseball or about soccer or whatever, that they're wondering about new projects, and people are, because it affects people so much. I think it's true to say the older we get, you realize that architecture matters much more than the general public realize, and that you are, as a young person, hopefully have a long and healthy life, that you have sometimes opportunities and sometimes you won't, but it'll be like a wave. There'll be really full times and empty times and full times and empty times. It isn't, I think, life is not a line. It's a series of events. And I think that having good colleagues, believing in architecture as having the potential to contribute to other people's lives and make, you know, going home, having a view of a park, having a school that's every place. We use the term architecture as the new geography, because it's not just a pretty thing here and a pretty thing there. It's infrastructure, it's dealing with flooding, it's bridges, it's an amazing profession. And you are unbelievably lucky and intelligent to be within a structure that supports that intelligence, that spatial. But you can imagine a future. So yourself and Greta Thunberg and David Attenborough and engineers, we're all in this together. And I think the unfortunate thing about the pandemic is that it has pointed out that we are in all of this together. We are connected. And I think I just wish you well on your journey. Hope it's a long, so you're going to be 120 and then you're satisfied with all your buildings, whatever you do.
I hope so eventually. Well, Shelley and Yvonne of Grafton Architects, thank you so much for talking with me. I'll let you jump over to the other window for your lecture, and I'm sure there's a bunch of students waiting to keenly look at your work. So
Thank you, Martin.
Bye, Martin.
So we have to come out and come back in again, Yvonne.
Yeah.
Here, and then you have to join the other room.
Okay.
Okay. Enjoy yourself. Bye, Martin. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.